Alright guys, thank you for watching my channel. I wanted to go ahead and make a video. This video is going to be entitled Finishing Up. And what this is my backyard discovery solar build. And what it consists of, two of the 11.4 kilowatt inverters. You can see them both right here. You can see how the breakers come in right here. What I also did is I also added a Chargeverter system to the unit to where you get a cloudy day and it's not wanting to charge. Then this here takes over and it'll fix that problem. You can see right here where you've got two main bus bars that come in, and that's where everything, that's like the central connection box for everything. So what I wanted to go over here is, if you look at this right here, you can see how you've got master and slave. So if you look right here, you can see where it says master right there. And you come back, you come over to this other one over here. And let me show you where we're at here. You click on this one here, and you can see it doesn't show master or anything. What this is your slave battery. If you look up here, this is how your DIN settings on your slave battery should be. They should all be in the down position if you're using these sungoldpower wall batteries on the slave only. Now if you look at the connection here, this is line in. This line in comes over from the second or the first master battery, which right here, this would be your line in. Line in comes and it goes from the line in to the inverter. Line out goes to the slave battery, and that would be in the line in on the slave battery. But your DIN settings on your master should always be 2 and 6 up, the rest down. And you should have a green light if it's set up the right way. Now, something the directions does not show here, and that's what we're going to go over right now. Let me open this up real fast here. Show everybody how this looks. You see right here, I'm operating in pure backup power. That's it. Nothing else, nothing more. I do not have a grid. I do have grid here, but I wanted this to be an off-grid system. Now, you've seen that's inverter, that's your master inverter. That's what it should look like. Come over here. Here's your slave inverter. Your slave inverter is up. Now, what the directions show and what you do not do. So in the directions, they show that they want the BMS system jump from the master over to the slave. They want your safety cutoff switch or a rapid shutdown device, which mine's on the outside of the house. They want it wired on this one and on the slave. Okay, this is where the directions get it wrong. You don't put any of that on the slave. The only thing that needs to go to the slave will be your main power. So if you're gonna run it to a backup, now this is for pure off-grid. If you're running a grid-tied system, then you'd obviously run your grid with the Torrid sitting on the grid wires towards the magnet that comes in it. And if you look at the manual, it'll reference that. But mine's pure backup, and I don't have a generator. So the only wires that should be coming into this slave unit here should be your wires for your backup that come down, and then they feed down. And then this here is where my box is that feeds those wires. So I have a set of wires that come from the master into here. I have a set that comes from the slave over here. And then the main connectors that connect all of those together goes outside over to a 100 amp fuse or a 100 amp breaker. And then it goes from the breaker over to the transfer switch. And that transfer switch is set up for a grid or solar. So if the grid gives me any, or if the solar gives me any problem, it's as simple as me flipping the transfer switch down, I'm back on grid. When you get these inverters, they will come with these right here, these Wi-Fi communication systems. You're gonna want those. Those all get plugged in too. But back on to what needs to go into this. In your slave inverter, the only thing that needs to go here is your parallel cable from your master over to here. It sits right here. There's 2 switches. They're little red switches that sit right next to that parallel. You need to make sure they're on. And in these inverters, the on position is down. The manual makes it up here as if it's up. But if you look at the switch, you can see where it says on, it's in the down position. when you're starting these up, there's another thing the manual does not mention. When you're starting them up, you need to separate them. So, for example, I'll show you here in a sec. Let me get this thing locked back up. So when you're starting these up, these need to have a secondary time. So like for example, my master inverter, and this is set in grid perimeters. When you're setting up your all your settings inside of this. I set this one here at the connection time and reconnection time at 10 seconds. I set this one over here for the connection and reconnection at 60 seconds. The purpose of that is, and this is something the manual doesn't go over, the purpose of that is when this turns on, it needs to come on, it needs to fully boot up, and it needs to be already on and working. Then, once this one's on, this one here is coming off that 60 seconds, because it takes about a minute to really load them up and get them ready. This one here is running at about 10 seconds when this one's already fully loaded. Once this one comes on, it will turn around and it will set up the parallel system. It'll allow it to configure correctly. If they're set to boot up simultaneously, you'll get an error on the parallel connect on the second slave inverter, and it won't do anything. It'll just simply stay off. So you need to set them up to where one's 10 seconds, one's 59 seconds. And like I said, you can find that in the perimeters where you'll see like your grid connection, and you set your system reconnect and system connect. 10 seconds here, 60 seconds here. This right here, these are your PV arrays. So I've got one array that comes in here. It pretty much just charges the battery at this point. And then this is the main master, and this one here powers the loads. Another thing you'll notice here, you can see right here where this has got the backup right here. So this one's running in backup. This one here is simply on. There is no backup, if you notice that. That's not unusual. What that is, that's just a standby. So if this one starts becoming overpowered, this one will switch over to backup, and it'll power the additional loads. But with that being said, if anybody has any questions on the inverters themselves and how you set them up, feel free to reach out to me and I'll gladly walk you through how it should be set up, as well as the batteries and how everything's connected. Now going through a little bit more in depth on these, you notice on the batteries, each one of these batteries have a 200 amp fuse. And they come down and they go right into these bus bars right here. There's your main battery. Here's your slave battery. Right here's another one of them fuses. You can see where it comes down, goes into the fuse, comes over to the bus bar. And then after it comes out of that fuse, up at the top of the breaker, and these breakers are labeled. You can see right here, see how it says line and load. So your line in, that's your power source line that comes into the breaker, and then it goes from this over to the bus bar, and then the bus bar shuts it down, and then that solves anything that has to do with the power. So that's at least how I got them set up currently. The Chargeverter, very, very easy to set up. So you get one of these Chargeverters, you can see mine's in the off position right now. Let's see if I can get it to where it shows up. You can see where it shows voltage, 55.9. Right now there's no current, and I did not use the SOC connection, I used the volt. Because the SOC, the state of charge, you can't use this in parallel with the inverters and the battery, so you have to choose. So I chose to go with volts. My high setting on volts, I believe on the charger is 55.5 volts, and that's what it charges at, and I got the current set at 30 amps. These can go all the way up to 100 amps. Mine's tied in to 220, which is grid fed. The reason this is set up like this is because the inverters were trying to backfeed into the grid, and you can't have that with these being connected. You cannot backfeed into the grid at all. But with that being said, like I said, anybody has any questions, any comments, I may make another video because I plan on hiding all this and making it more adaptable to where it looks a little bit prettier. But anybody has any questions or you need any information, feel free to, go ahead and send a message and I'll answer it as soon as I can. With that being said, if you like my videos, please like, subscribe. Anything helps. I just like getting the word out. with people who are looking to go solar, and how you would manage to do it, and how the setup and programming is on it as well. But I thank you guys for watching. Hope everybody has a great day. Thanks again. Bye.